Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer.
Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
Our friends at Cobra have introduced the new King LTDX irons designed to deliver next level distance and forgiveness. Available in both variable and one length offerings, the LTDX irons combine an intelligent power core weighting design with a thinner and larger power shell face, creating a superior choice for the perfect blend of forgiveness, high launch, excellent feel, and longest total distance, which is what we're all about. For more information on the LTDX family of products, visit cobragolf.com.au or drop into your nearest golf shop. This is the 19th Tee podcast. Just Kieran Marsh with you this week. Nathan, a well-earned week off. Drew's to celebrating another lap around the sun with his birthday tonight. So a very happy birthday to Nathan on behalf of our entire 19th Tee family. But I am not on my own this evening. I mentioned last week that we were going to have a chat with the people behind an exciting new tournament on the roster for the Australian summer. And I'm very pleased to say that we are joined by the chairman of the Cathedral Invitational, David Evans. David, welcome to the 19th Tee. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Kieran. Nice to be invited.
It's exciting. I must say, we flagged a little bit of this in last week's episode. I said my algorithms on my Instagram account work very neatly, David, where it skews me towards an awful lot of golf content. And in recent weeks, I've been seeing, Adam Scott confirmed, Kari Webb confirmed, Cameron Smith confirmed, and I keep clicking on confirmed to what? Lo and behold, it's your tournament, the Cathedral Invitational. Tell us a little bit about, I suppose, the thoughts and the genesis behind what is shaping up to be a fantastic 2 days down in Victoria.
It is. It's very exciting. Well, the genesis dates back to many years ago when I first started to have the idea to create Cathedral Golf Club, which is on our family's farm, about 2 hours by car northeast of Melbourne. And we had Greg Norman build a wonderful, beautiful golf course on our farm, which the topography was perfect, and Greg completely fell in love with the land, fell in love with the concept, and we opened the course back in November 2017, and that was the first part of the dream. The second part of the dream was to have a private invitational tournament where the club owned the tournament, and we got to stage once a year a coming together of wonderful golfers across the female game, male game, and also the amateur game as well, and that's the background to it.
You've positioned it well in terms of just a short few days after the Australian Open, which means you've really got your pick of the bunch. We've got so many fantastic players heading home from overseas for the first time in a long time. Obviously, the Australian Open being staged for the first time in a few years. And, of course, the pick of our best up-and-coming talent here competing across the entire summer. So I'm sure it was quite a deliberate choice, I suppose, in your schedule placement to give yourself the best possible chance of filling out a great field.
It was strategically done that way. We knew that that the Australian Open was going to attract a great field this year. James Sutherland and Golf Australia have done a great job in working extremely hard over the last 18 months to ensure that it is a great field made up of the cream of Australian golf. And we thought that, this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is something I've wanted to do for a long time. So what better way to piggyback off the Australian Open and start baby steps effectively. So have a 2-day event, introduce the players to the golf course, introduce the players to the concept, and then build from there. So I could have gone straight to a 72-hole event, but I thought that this way was a way of starting small, focusing on what we needed to do it really, really well in coming years. Now, whether that's next year or in 5 years' time to get to 72 holes, I'm not exactly sure. It'll depend on how we go in December, but certainly the building blocks so far are very solid, and we've got the makings of a great tournament.
It's unique in the sense that it's over 2 days. Can you give us an idea of how the format will work? We've obviously got traditional 72 hole stroke play events. We've now got a 54 hole version making waves internationally. How will the 2-day event shape up format wise?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story how we got to here. So I copied a tournament that's very successful in the US, played at the Seminole Golf Club in Florida, where they have a member pro event, which I think is off the back of the Honda. I'm not exactly sure which PGA Tour event it's off, but I think it's the Honda. And it almost becomes a competition between members as to the pros that they can get to play. So we've done it over the last couple of years, and last year was very successful. We had Jeff Ogilvy win our member pro. So that's the evolution of this event, that it came from a member pro event, and now it's obviously a 36-hole event. The member pro event will still be on the Monday, where it'll be just private, so the gates will still be locked. But then on day 2, the members won't play, and the scores from the first day obviously will count for the pros. And then we open the gates on Tuesday, the 6th of December, and we're expecting ticket sales been going well. We're expecting about 3,500 people for day 2, which will be the final day without the members. That's just the pros playing.
And you've also engaged a broadcaster. Fox jumped on board to get out there on the 6th. It must be fantastic to see. Obviously, last summer as well, they jumped on board. They've come back this year. Getting eyeballs on golf is so important at this juncture. Well, I'm sure it was a very welcome addition to your tournament to have the cameras there on day 2.
It is. Patrick Delaney from Foxtel, he bought straight away into the vision, and we'll be working with Foxtel not just this year, but going forward to build it out. And so they've got some ideas to how they'd like to do it. We're getting help from Jam TV, who are doing the production. Good friend and member of Cathedral, Eddie Maguire, is the principal and founder of Jam TV. So there's some really interesting people who are connected to the club that have got great media background, and they've certainly helped me in setting up what we're trying to do with the broadcast.
Quite curious about the course. Obviously, it's your passion. It's your piece of land, and it's been your baby. But to transition it from, a day-to-day private member course to a course that can host serious tournament golf, and the infrastructure that comes with crowds, broadcast compounds for TV. How's that transition been for the property itself?
Yeah, it's a good question, Kieran. I haven't been asked that one before. It's a really interesting golf course for people who haven't played it. It's got 5 par 3s, 5 par 5s. Greg designed it around the natural canyons that weave in and out of the property, and they've pushed the greens right up against those canyons, and some greens inside the canyon. So it does lend itself for some thrilling shot making, and we think on camera it's going to look wonderful. And I think, to be honest with you, I think that's why we've been able to get the field that we have, because there's a lot of interest around playing the golf course. Some of the pros that will be playing have, of course, experienced it at the previous member pros, but I think the word has got around, and I know Mark Leishman, who is playing, said to me the other day that he's really looking forward to coming and playing the golf course that he's heard so much about. So I think there's a bit of that. There's a bit of anticipation around the playing of the course, because each hole, it's as Greg says, and Greg's been really kind enough to say publicly that it's some of the best work he's ever done. And the way he describes it, there's nothing like it in the world. It's so unique in that every hole has sort of got a different story and is on a different piece of the land, and he's sort of really worked with the terrain and the topography to create something that's, for golfers is probably something particularly those on the USPGA don't necessarily get to play very often. So I think the golf course itself will certainly be the star of the show.
I wonder what drove you, David, to make the decision to really invest and press ahead with this concept, because I think it's one thing to be a passionate fan of the game, but it's another to really stake your own, put skin in the game and really stake yourself to put a destination and a tournament on the map to contribute to the growth of the game here in Australia. So what was, I suppose, a tipping point for you to say, I actually want to go all in on this and be a part of, not necessarily, I don't want to say part of the solution, but part of that movement that is going to continue to push the game forward in this country?
Well, Kieran, I just remain passionate about the game. The game has been so good to me. It's I love it, but also the people I've met through the game. And I've played a lot of golf in America and played a lot of golf at some really wonderful private golf courses. So I guess Cathedral was almost like a coming together of probably about a dozen different models and golf courses that I saw, models of membership and golf clubs that I'd played at around the world, predominantly in America. And so I was bringing the great thing that I found, it was so much fun to bring that model that I'd enjoyed so much in America over to Australia, which it hadn't been done we've only got 180 members, so very low membership model, and the ability to create something that can also be developed into a golf tournament on this golf course every year, which is of course what the Masters and Augusta have done, is something really unique and special, and that's really the passion behind why I'm doing it, and I think particularly for the region where it is, which it's a part of the world that's very dear to us. My wife grew up in that area. She's fifth generation in that region, so to be able to take wonderful golf to that region and showcase with the patrons how beautiful that area is, as in northeastern Victoria, is another reason why I'm doing it as well. So it's one, passion of golf, but it's two, passion for the area and the region, and opening it up to people around Australia.
I don't think anybody really, until they're probably in it, has a concept of the logistics involved in pulling a tournament together, be it day, 2 day, 4 days. Can you give us a bit of an insight into, once you scratch the surface, whether it's, the attraction and the signing of players, right down to event logistics of crowd control and bringing people through the full scale involved in pulling something like this together?
Yeah, well, I'd never done anything like this before. I'd sort of watched it happen with people that I know that have been connected. So I had a sense of a structure that I wanted, but nothing like this comes off without the players. And when we were able to get Mark Leishman, was, to his great credit, he was the first one that put his hand up. So I knew that when we'd signed Mark that we had something, and I got to pay credit to my organising committee, which is made up of Matt Jager, our director of golf, is a current Australian Tour player. He's got great relationships with the Australian Tour players. So with his stamp on it, and I guess with him working with me, I immediately got, I guess, the trust and faith of the young Australian players. And then using my contacts, people like Nick Ahern, who's a member, Paul Sheehan, Jeff Ogilvie, they're all members of the club. So using their contacts, and we were able to, pretty quickly get in touch and pitch the idea to a lot of, very significant Australian names in golf. So once the players started to say yes, it sort of snowballed, and then the sponsorship unfolded well, and that really has been down to the membership of Cathedral and their companies that they represent or they work with and own. They've sponsored the event. So it really has been a collegiate approach by all the Cathedral members to get this together. And I have to acknowledge that, because without the members, this doesn't work.
How have you found the tour's adoption and embrace of your kind of event popping up? Because I think it's notable that in the last couple of years we've seen a variety of different formats and things pop up. Yep. Whether it's the TPS has really become such a valuable part of our summer to flesh out the calendar. Events like yours now coming into the calendar to really, I suppose, create volume. It's not just a couple of handful signature events. It's now complementing what the tour has done a great job in bringing back to its full complement this summer.
Yeah, the tour have been great. We've been obviously working with the Australasian PGA Tour and Golf Australia, and they really have been very welcoming, very encouraging. Obviously, this is an event that's owned by us, the club, but they immediately got the fact that this is another event that they can put on the calendar, and creates a stop for them in Victoria. Now, where we fit on the calendar going forward, that's obviously something we have to discuss. But I feel where we are now, from where we were 6 months ago, with our relationship with Foxtel our relationship with the regulators as far as Golf Australia and the PGA Tour, the players. I think we're in a good position to develop something really special. But the calendar is going to be critical going forward because, trying to fit. This is why the Australian Tour has struggled, because access to players, given their choice internationally, with the prize money they get to play for internationally, has made the Australian Tour really difficult to develop. And I get that. But hopefully we can find a slot in the calendar, get the credentials with the players, and we can get back to having an Australian Tour that looks something like what we had when I was growing up, when the Australian Tour was brilliant. We typically had a tournament every second week, and the great names like Norman and Stanley, Shearer, Billy Dunk. They're great players that became household names when you watch them every weekend on the ABC with Peter Thompson commentating. So, they're great memories. And you asked about why I'm doing it. I'd love to see Australian golf and the Australian Tour get back to those halcyon days where following of golf tournaments was so rich.
Probably a good segue to get your thoughts, David, obviously as both a passionate fan and now someone with skin in the game, about we've spoken a lot in recent months about how important we feel this summer in particular is, in terms of the first summer really post-pandemic, where we've had a full tournament schedule, the first summer in a long time where we seemingly had a lot of names commit to come home from overseas. And it really does feel like it's important that the tour broadly capitalizes on the opportunity they have this summer. And it is a little bit of chicken and egg. I mean, you need to show that you've got the product before you get the investment of corporate Australia and the commercial side of the business. But realistically, like whether it's eyeballs watching on Foxtel or whether it's people walking through the gates at these tournaments, this really does feel like a critical summer for the game to propel itself forward. I
agree with that. I think it's a really important time in golf in Australia. But I think Australian golf is in good hands. James Sutherland's been a close friend of mine. We grew up together. He's a really good pair of hands to develop the game here in Australia at grassroots as well as at the professional level. And the field he's put together for the Australian Open is really a great credit to him. But you're right. Australian golf has got to deliver for fans. It's got to maintain the fans' interest. It's got to create a product that is saleable to sponsors and broadcasters. And so you're right. This is a really important few months coming up.
What do you think the opportunity is for golf to, I suppose, paint a point of difference? Because I think one of the difficult things it faces, particularly in a saturated summer of sport, is making it appealing to particularly commercial partners. It finds itself in a situation across the last couple of years where it's become increasingly dependent on, state government contracts to take tournaments to different places across the country. And you'd love to see it probably skew back towards a more commercial and typically commercial relationship with private business. But it's got to have that point of difference that you say. And I wonder, you're obviously a fan, but you've got that commercial now. So I wonder what you thought might be its point of difference in its ability to sell itself a little better than it currently does.
Yeah, I think it comes down to personalities. And, again, don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but back in the days when I was following golf as a teenager in my early 20s, the characters and the personalities that were in Australian golf, the crowds that used to follow Norman were just huge. I mean, they were 12 deep on the 18th fairway watching him play. And then, Ian Baker Finch, Stuart Ginn, they're real characters of the game that made you want to come through the gates and watch golf week in, week out, or turn on the television on a Sunday afternoon and watch the last 9 holes. So I think Golf Australia and people like us, if we can unearth those characters and those personalities and those, you only got to look at someone like Harrison Crowe, who just won over the last few days. I mean, what a great story that is, to now think that he's about to go to the Masters. And And so I think there are opportunities now to take some of the young talent in Australia, and indeed some of the talent that's been overseas and hasn't been back to Australia for a while because of the pandemic. People like Adam. Be great to see Jason Day back here at some stage, Mark Leishman, Cam Smith. So with these great players now coming back and mixing some of that young talent like Harrison Crowe in with that, that's really where the future of the game is in Australia, and that's why it was so successful. The tour was so successful, where you had those personalities. So, but that's up to a few of us, and hopefully the Cathedral Invitational can play its part in developing some of those names, and I believe it's the players the only way that gets back to where it was.
There's got to be the avenue to facilitate it, and tournaments like yours and a fuller schedule are doing that. There's also got to be the environment. As you say, players have been previously constrained with essentially a 48-week season on the PGA Tour. We know that there's changes in that space from next year onwards, but it seems as though this summer in particular, whether it's because of those changes, whether it's because those players who've moved to live golf have the freedom to come home and play, that there is an overwhelming sense of coming back. How have you found that to deal with in terms of the players? I imagine it hasn't necessarily taken a great deal of convincing now the opportunities there to get back home and play in front of their family and friends.
Yeah, it has been easy because there is a genuine want to be back in Australia, help develop the tour, play in front of their family and friends, and I think going back to your question about how we can get back golf back to where it was in Australia as far as the tour goes, it's about storytelling, and there's some great stories that are starting to emerge in Australian golf now, with obviously Cam Smith's amazing year. Mark Leishman hasn't been back for a while. He's still a wonderful player doing great things on the World Tour and now live. Adam Scott's last couple of months in America were fantastic, and every time he comes back here, he supports Australian golf. And as I said, some of these young players that we're starting to see, Jed Morgan, as I mentioned, the great performance by Harrison Crowe on the weekend. So there are some real great stories starting to emerge, which we should celebrate. And I think the other thing is that golf is on fire at the moment. Like golf, probably 5 or 6 years ago, was really struggling, but now golf, whether that's the pandemic or that gave golf the boost that it needed as far as participation, but you just get, as a fan, I mean, obviously I've been there all the way through as far as watching as much golf as I could possibly get on TV, but you feel like that the participation of the broader community in watching golf and understanding who's doing what in golf is broadened, and I can only imagine that the pandemic has played a pretty significant part in that.
Speaking of names, what does it mean to be able to put Kari Webb's name up on the roster to participate in this tournament? I mean, we say it often. We feel as though she's the undisputed GOAT of Australian golf, and to have her buy into this concept and lend her name to it, I imagine must be quite humbling, David.
Yeah, I was blown away when she said yes. I didn't expect her to say yes, but she's been nothing but supportive over the last couple of weeks that we've been talking to her and her management. So yeah, she's just excited to come and play a new golf course, new event. The fact that it's only 2 days was I think the reason she said yes. And I agree with you. I mean, what an amazing career she's had, extraordinary, and not probably fully appreciated.
Just want to maybe pivot as we near the end. You've been very generous with your time. We thank you for that. Just to, I suppose, get your thoughts on golf more broadly. We are probably at a period of change for the game. It's been a little hostile probably in the last 8 to 12 months with the emergence of live golf and the divide that's driven between the game. But many would argue it's probably provided the disruption that was necessary after a long time of having necessarily the same product. So as a person who's watched the game for many, many years, and for a person who's, clearly got a passion to involve themselves in, taking it forward, how have you viewed the last couple of months and maybe where the game's at more broadly?
Well, as I said a moment ago, I think the game is on fire at the moment as far as eyeballs watching it, participation, people just talking about golf and its personalities. Yeah, Greg Norman is a close personal friend of mine. We worked obviously very closely together on the Cathedral project, so I've got to know him and his family very well. Greg is a passionate guy that has a vision for the game and where he thinks the game should go, and he's got his dream to play that out in the role that he's been given at Live, and he's clearly been incredibly successful at doing that. Now, it's clear that both parties have struggled to find a compromise. Whether that comes further down the track, you would hope so. But you can only look at the positives that I would comment on. That's certainly been good for players because prize money's gone up, certainly amongst the top 200 odd players in the world. It's now hopefully at a point where the parties can get together over coming months to provide something that is workable as far as the calendar goes. Now, I'm not close enough to know whether that's doable or not, but I do know that Greg is very focused on what's good for the game of golf. He believed wholeheartedly that the game needed changing in a certain direction, and is the reason why he did what he did with Liv, and the opportunity was given. So all power to him for having a dream and building that out. So I've got nothing but admiration for Greg for what he's done.
Well, speaking of having a dream and building it out, David, I think it's what we're going to see on the 5th and 6th of December, your dream coming to fruition down there at Cathedral Lodge. It's been great to spend a bit of time hearing about the tournament, understanding the motivation and the passion and the dream behind it. And we certainly look forward to tuning in, me personally up here in Brisbane, but hopefully for a lot of our listeners down in Victoria, the opportunity to get out there. cathedralinvitational.com.au is the website where you can get a little bit more information, as well as the link to purchase your tickets to day 2 on Tuesday the 6th. David, we wish you the very best of luck. We certainly look forward to tuning in and catching all the action, and hopefully checking in this time every year moving forward, and what is going to be no doubt a fixture on the schedule. Thanks so much for joining us on the 19th Tee.
Good man. Thanks, Kieran. Appreciate it.